we from Ipswich people felt stand out and we even Sunday Martin.
Please could you tell us about your job and what you like about it?
I've been elected by the people in Ipswich to go and speak up for them in Parliament in London. And so I spent some of my time in Parliament in London talking about things which I think matter to the people of Ipswich. And I spent some of my time in Ipswich talking to Ipswich people so that I know what they want me to speak about, because I need to have chats with people here in Ipswich so that I know what to tell people in London about Ipswich. And the things I like about it are, first of all, which I think everybody really, really likes if they get a job that this happens, is being listened to. There are far too many people who do a job where nobody ever listens to a word they say, but people actually listen to me now, which is great. And I also like bringing people together, especially, you know, if I've got groups of people I can bring together here in Ipswich, and I like that, and I like being part of a team. I've got people working for me, so we're all part of a team, and we can actually get more things done than we would do if I just started doing it on my own.
What would you say your strengths are?
The things I'm probably best at are, I'm good at listening. I'm a good listener, and listening to what people have got to say. I've got a very good imaginative mind, so I'm very good at thinking about things which other people haven't thought about beforehand. And I get really passionate, I get really enthusiastic about the things that I believe in. So those, I think, are strengths. And John, you didn't ask me, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because you said, what were my strengths? And you didn't ask me what my weaknesses were. So I'm going to tell you what my weaknesses are as well, what I think are my weaknesses. And the biggest one is I have an absolutely rubbish memory. So I never remember anything. I don't remember what I've said. I don't remember where I've been. I don't remember people I've met either, which is really not very good. And sometimes people get a bit upset because I don't remember who they are. But anyway, I'll try. I do try. Another thing I'm not good at is I'm not very good at disguising my feelings. So if you're in a room and somebody's saying something which you think is really awful, sometimes if you're in an organisation, you actually need to be good at just pretending not to hear or pretending not to get worked up. I'm not very good at that. And I get very easily bored and tired. So I sometimes sit in meetings and it just gets very, very boring. Well, that's not a good look either.
What do you like to do in your spare time?
Right. Well, I don't have very much spare time at the moment. And most of the time when I'm not working, I'm either eating or sleeping. But when I do have spare time that I can actually enjoy doing something, I really like going on long walks. I like music and I sing. I don't sing very often, but I enjoy singing. So sometimes I get involved in singing, and I think I'm going to be singing in Messiah in the church here in Ipswich this Christmas. I've certainly intended to, but whether I actually arranged it or not, I'm not quite sure. And I also like poetry. I like listening to people reading poetry, and I quite like writing a little bit of poetry myself, although I haven't written any poetry for a long time. Many years ago, when you were just a small boy and John wasn't even born yet, I'm guessing, are you under 25? Yeah. So this was about 25 years ago. I was doing a job which involved me sitting absolutely still and not doing anything. And I was actually working at the college as a model. So I was just sitting still and all the students were drawing me. And so I couldn't do anything at all. I couldn't move, I couldn't read, I couldn't do anything. So what I was doing, thoughts were going through my head, and I was actually writing poems in my head while I was keeping still. And so I really enjoyed that. It was a way of actually making use of that time. But yes, I haven't written any poems for quite a long time now because I've been too busy.
Do you like Ed Sheeran?
I don't know Ed Sheeran. I am probably the only person in the universe who has never heard an Ed Sheeran song ever, because I've never made an effort to hear it. So no, I'm certainly not a fan of Ed Sheeran, simply because I don't know anything about him. But that's not my sort of music. I like classical music, and as I say, I quite like singing as well. So I sing classical music as well.
What would you like to see change or improve in the next 5 years?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is I think we need to have more power and resources for the public bodies, public sector. So the public things are things where you don't have to pay to use them, like if you get ill and you go and see a doctor or you have to go to hospital, you don't have to pay for that. And like school, where people go to school, they don't have to pay for that. And those, I think, are the most important things. We need to make sure that people are healthy, that they probably get the good education they need, and they get all the other support and help that they need. And in order to provide those things, people who've got lots of money, we have to take some of their money so that we can spend it on schools and on hospitals. But I actually think that we're not using enough money for those things. And when people say, oh, well, we can't afford to spend any more, I think you only have to look at some of the things that people do spend their money on to see how pointless some of them are. So the next time you see a Lamborghini or a really top-of-the-range Mercedes, or you see somebody going into a jeweller's shop and coming out with £500 worth of necklace, you think, actually, do people really need those things? I don't think they do. I think it would be better to spend the money on schools and hospitals. And I also think we should have more respect for each other as people. And I'll do everything I can to get people in Ipswich to respect each other more. And I think there should be more opportunities for young people to get work and to have homes of their own.
Are you a religious?
No. Okay, I was actually, for a short time, when I was a teenager, I became a born-again Christian. I thought this was wonderful, and I took it very seriously, and I went to Christian camps in the summer holidays, and I went to prayer meetings and everything. And then when I was about 20, I just thought it was a load of nonsense, and I gave it up. So I don't believe in God. I don't believe God exists. I'm not opposed to people who want to believe in God, but I just don't think that there is a God, and I think that quite a lot of energy goes into worshipping something that doesn't exist.
Do you do sports?
I hated sport when I was at school because most of it involved kicking balls or throwing balls or something to do with balls, and if you're in a team and you can't do that, then you get bullied by other people in the school, other people in the class, because you're not good enough. And I sort of hated the whole thing. I used to go along to football matches when I was at school, and I used to stand as far away from the ball as I could possibly be. And people used to shout at me and so on. And then after a bit, I realised that actually the best thing to do was not to turn up at all. And the worst thing that anyone could do was put me in detention. I'd sit in a nice warm classroom and write an essay instead, which was much better than standing on a muddy football pitch. However, I do enjoy walking, I enjoy running, I enjoy cycling. So those were the things that I used to do when I was at school, and I still do now. I don't cycle, I don't do them competitively, so I'm not in a team. I don't sort of run or cycle competitively, but I think everyone needs to keep fit, and I enjoy running. And we had the Great East Run here a couple of months ago, and so I did that and raised about £1,000 for Ipswich Housing Action Group, which is a group that helps people to get houses if they haven't got anywhere to live.
Do you think we have enough place in Suffolk?
No, I don't. We've actually got about 300 less policemen now in Suffolk than we had 10 years ago. There's not enough money for the police. And also, it's not just the police officers on the street, it's also the people back in the main centre doing all the other work, taking the phone, making sure that all the evidence is in the right place. There are far too few of those as well. So too many people are getting away with crime that they shouldn't be getting away with. And more importantly, too many people are getting involved in crime. See, the more people that get away with committing crimes, the more young people actually then get involved with it because they know that they can make a bit of money out of crime. And then you end up with a situation like we had last year where a young man, Tavis, was murdered, stabbed to death. But he's not the only one who's been stabbed. There's been a lot of young people who've been stabbed in Ipswich because they've been involved in drugs and crime, and we need to stop that, and the best way to stop that is to have more police.
In what way do you think town passes can help their police?
Well, they help them just by being there, because if you're there on the streets and people can see you're there, then that's a way of stopping people from committing crimes because they know that there's other people who might watch them. But secondly, they can help people, they can talk to people, they can help them if they are not sure where to go or what is going on, which means that the police can spend more time on trying to make sure they catch people who are committing crimes. And also, if they notice that something is not right, they can actually contact the police and make sure the police arrive and deal with the situation as well. So they can be very helpful.
What are your views on Brexit?
Do you want the 4-minute version or the 4-hour version? I think it's a shame that people voted to leave the European Union. I said so very openly. We campaigned to try and persuade people to vote to stay in the European Union, and there's no reason for me to change my mind. I think it's also a shame that more people voted Conservative at the last general election than voted Labour at the last general election. And I'm not going to stop saying that either. But I'm not going to... we can't change the government just because we don't like the way people voted for the government. And we can't change the fact that people voted for Brexit, even though we don't like it. And I don't think we're going to be able to stop it now. I think it's too late. And it's not too late because I haven't done enough. It's too late because people voted for Brexit and they voted for a Conservative government which has put Brexit forward. And I think we will leave in March of next year. I don't know what will happen after that, but my guess is that things will get worse. And if they get worse enough, then people might change their minds. And if they change their minds enough, then who knows, one day we might come back in and join again. But all of that, I don't know, it's in the future.
How could we improve NHS? We know that they are struggling and working really hard.
There is no limit. There's no end to how much you could spend on the National Health Service. And some people say, oh, well, we're already spending an enormous amount of money on the National Health Service. We can't afford to spend any more. But actually, if you look at how much they spend on health in America or in Germany or in France, they spend a lot more money on their health service than we do here. And we actually get better health for the money that we spend because we spend it on health things for people. It doesn't matter who you are. If it's John or Andrew or Chewy or me, if any one of us went to the hospital or went to the surgery, we would get the same quality of treatment as each of us. Whereas if you're in America, it depends on which doctor you can afford to pay for. If you're very wealthy, you can afford to pay for very expensive doctors and very expensive hospitals, and you get the best treatment in the world. If you're not very wealthy, you end up with rubbish doctors and rubbish hospitals who are stretched to the breaking point, who haven't got time to do the job properly. And actually, more people die younger in America than die younger here, because it's a much more unequal society. So I don't want that. I don't want to have an unequal society. I want more resources to go into the National Health Service, and we need more doctors, and we need more nurses, and we need to be training more people to be doctors and nurses. So more young people actually need to be doing studying to be doctors and nurses, and we need to pay them enough so that people don't go off and get other jobs. There are people who've worked as nurses who end up by going and working for Sainsbury's or Tesco because they can earn more money working for Sainsbury's or Tesco. I think that's just wrong. You know, we need skilled people who know what they're doing as doctors and nurses, and we need to pay them enough to stay there.
Some people are not happy with the new pathway at the Cornhill. What are your views?
Lots of people don't like things to change. And I think some of the people who were and still are unhappy about the new Cornhill just didn't like it being changed. Some people are very unhappy with anyone spending any money on something. So if you go and buy yourself a new jacket, and somebody says, well, how much did your new jacket cost? And you say, well, it cost me £85. And they might say, oh, that's far too much to spend on a jacket. But if it's a really nice jacket and it's one you're going to have for years and years and years, then it might well be worth spending the money on something that's really good. And I think that the Cornhill is looking much better now than it did before. I think children love the water feature. It's nice to have places to sit down. It's bright and fresh. It was looking a bit old and worn out, and there were a lot of broken paving slabs and things before. So it is a lot of money, but I actually think it looks really nice. And we need to have a place in the middle of Ipswich where people want to come. We need people to want to come to Ipswich.
How can we recruit and keep teachers their jobs?
Well, it's the same as what I said about nurses. You know, we need to be encouraging young people to actually go into teaching. I actually don't think that we are we do enough persuading. There are too many young people who do fairly unnecessary courses and studies and go into jobs which don't really make a lot of difference. And we need to be persuading more young people to actually go into teaching. And we need to improve, actually, the education in some areas so that people actually learn enough to be teachers as well. We're not, particularly with maths and science, we're not very good at teaching people in this county, in Suffolk and Ipswich, how to do maths and how to do science. And so we don't get people who are then good enough to teach maths and science. And we need to pay teachers enough so that they stay as teachers and don't go off and get other jobs elsewhere.
Housing is a huge issue for people with learning disability and with vulnerable people. People can be waiting on waiting lists for years and years, and still living at home with their families. What do you think about this?
Lots of people. I mean, I think everybody wants to have somewhere to live of their own.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are living in places which are just not good enough. There are some people there are a very, very small number of people who have nowhere to live at all and who are out on the streets. Then there's a much larger number of people who haven't got anywhere of their own and end up by having to share with a friend, sleeping on the sofa or sleeping on the floor. And then there are quite a lot of people who are old enough to have somewhere to live for themselves, but they haven't got anywhere to go, so they stay with their parents, and that often doesn't work. And sometimes you end up by, your parents get really fed up with you, and you get really fed up with your parents as well. So we need to make sure that far more people have somewhere to live. And that is true whether you've got learning disabilities or not got learning disabilities. But I do realise that for people with learning disabilities, you've got an extra problem. And I think that somewhere where you can have your own place, so it is your own place, but there is somebody around who can help you if you've got any problems. I think that works really well. I don't know if you know there's a place just the other side of Silent Street here, run by a group. So they don't own the building. The building is owned by the people who live there. It belongs to the people who have the flats there. But they always have somebody on the premises who actually makes sure, looks after them, makes sure that if there's something that goes wrong, that they can have somebody to turn to. And I think that's a really, really good way of doing it. And I know that they're looking to build another big place with more extra spaces for people with learning disabilities. So I'll do anything I can to support them, talk to people, try and get a place for them so that they can actually have more flats, so that more people with learning disabilities can have their own flat, and they know that it's theirs. They can do whatever they want with it, but there's somebody on hand to help them when they need help.
One day, would you like to be a Prime Minister?
That's the killer question, isn't it? I'm too old. I'm much too old. I think people who are going to be Prime Minister need to start at a fairly young age. I can see some of the very keen, very energetic young members of Parliament now, and they're already getting themselves into a situation where they're making a big name for themselves, and one day they hope to be Prime Minister. I'm much too old for that. I'm actually reaching the age at which, if I was in another sort of job, I'd be thinking about retiring. I'm not thinking about retiring because I've had years and years and years when I haven't done anything very much. So I'm actually doing I'm being my most energetic now at a time when some other people will already be thinking of retiring. But I've already told everybody that I have no intention of carrying on working once I've got past the age of 80. So we've got some years to go yet.